The New York Rangers ended their losing streak on Sunday, but now they're in a dogfight for the top spot in the Metropolitan Division. Chik of Locked On New York Rangers joins us to discuss that and what this team may end up doing at the trade deadline. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, Chik. And John, big win for the Rangers on Sunday, getting off the schneid, ending the losing streak. How important was this victory for the Rangers?
It was a big one. I'd say it's right up there with probably their biggest wins so far this season, because up until recently, they hadn't really faced any adversity for the most part this season. Prior to this 4-game skid that they just thankfully ended a little bit earlier today, their longest losing streak of the entire season was 2 games, and that had only happened once. I mean, that's how good they've been. That's how consistent they've been. That's how well they've done at responding to losses in the past. But, you play 82 games. I don't think there are too many teams that can get through a season without going through at least 1 or 2 rough patches here and there where things just aren't really clicking, and that was the case for the Rangers. But thankfully, they were able to grind one out today. And as much as I would like to see them just beat the Capitals 5-0, earlier today, I almost feel like a win like this, where you really have to fight for it, you really have to battle, you have to hang on in the end. I think in some ways, maybe that can be more beneficial to the team going forward, that they really had to earn this. Wasn't perfect, but they found a way to get it done. Big game for Igor Shesterkin. And hopefully this is the beginning of the turnaround here, where they get back on track and start winning again.
What wasn't clicking during this 4-game slump?
It was a little bit of everything. I mean, Igor Shesterkin was not playing his best hockey at that time. He had gone through a stretch not too long before that where he won 5 in a row and only allowed 8 goals in that time, but then he kind of fell off again. He's been a little bit up and down so far this season. I think also something that's really hurt them is they've struggled mightily. I mean, it's kind of been on and off all season, but it's been really bad in this 4-game losing streak. They've struggled with defending the rush. It feels like there's certain games where they do everything but roll out the red carpet through the neutral zone for some of these teams. They just kind of zip right through, and it's just kind of hard to figure out because, Adam Fox missed some time earlier this season, and when he was gone, it really felt like the Ranger defensemen really played some great hockey. They all stepped up. It kind of like galvanized them. It was kind of a call to arms. And since Fox has been back, I'm not saying that that's why. I mean, obviously Adam Fox being back is a good thing, but I don't know. It just feels like maybe they've lost their edge a little bit, some of the other defensemen, and there's been too many times where teams are just getting through the neutral zone with no resistance and, scoring. And the other big thing I would say is that 5v5, the Rangers basically have one line that can do damage offensively, 5v5, and that's the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line. Mika and Kreider, they're together, and they've had a lot of different right wingers with them this season, but they got hot for a while, but they haven't done enough 5v5. And the bottom 6, I mean, if they score a goal, you might want to play the lottery that day too, because it just doesn't happen very often right now. They're just not going to give you a lot of offense. Good defensive forwards, but not a lot of offense coming from those guys.
Were you surprised that Igor Shesterkin was chosen as the Rangers All-Star Game representative?
A little bit. I think the first thing when the news first broke, I think myself and a lot of Ranger fans had the same reaction: is how is Artemi Panarin not the Ranger All-Star, right? But as it turns out, it sounds like he told the NHL that he wasn't planning on going because, as it turns out, his wife is pregnant right now with their second child. So that being the case, he's not going to go play in what is a fun, game, a fun little tournament that they do, but ultimately a meaningless exhibition. So he wasn't going to be there. Rangers needed somebody else. They end up picking Igor Shesterkin. I think my personal choice would have probably been Vincent Trocheck. You can make some cases for some other guys as well. But Igor's got the reputation. He has played well at times this season. I was a little bit surprised, though. You could have made a case for a lot of different guys there.
And do you think he's really close to being consistently back to the Igor Shesterkin we knew last year and for most of his NHL career?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I do think he'll eventually get there, but, we are halfway through the season. There have certainly been ups and downs along the way. Obviously, he had an injury. I think that kind of tripped him up a little bit. These pro athletes and hockey players, they're such creatures of habit. And I think especially goalies, such a mentally and physically demanding position. And like I said, he had that stretch not too long ago where he went 5-0, only gave up the 8 goals in that time and was beating good teams, high-powered teams like Boston, Toronto. There was another good team in there too, another really good team. It's kind of escaping me right now, but the bottom line, he's playing really well against some really elite teams. So he's got it in him. And I think eventually he'll get there, but you just hope that his best hockey, and that's not to say he's been bad this year, because that's not the case at all, but you just hope that his best hockey is still in front of him. And I think it is, based on what we've seen from Igor thus far in his NHL career.
Now, all of a sudden, it's a battle. Carolina is right behind the New York Rangers. How do you think this team responds?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you want to get too caught up with looking at the standings every day. That's for us to do, right? Hopefully the players just go out there and they focus on winning and losing and doing what they can do to, control their own destiny. As far as, the divide between the Rangers and the Canes and even some other Metro teams closing, I'm not like shocked by it because, there's 82 games. It's a long season and this stuff is always going to fluctuate. I mean, yeah, the Rangers had a nice lead there, but to think that they were just going to, be in first place by 10 or more points the entire season, I don't think that was ever really going to happen. It's just too good of a division. There's too many good teams in it. It's too competitive of a league. Eventually, it's going to tighten up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the Rangers obviously be nice to win the division and get home ice for at least a couple of rounds there. I think, this is kind of inevitable that eventually things would tighten up a little bit. And obviously the Rangers still in the driver's seat. They've got everything in front of them. And you hope that today was the beginning of a turnaround here.
So the trade deadline is less than 2 months away. Obviously, the Rangers are going to be gunning for a Stanley Cup and a long playoff run at the very least. What moves do you see them doing? What are they looking for come the trade deadline, and who may they trade away?
So for the longest time, I felt that the Rangers' biggest need was right wing. And you could still make that argument that still could be the case. But you've had Lafreniere move from left wing to right wing this season, and he's playing the best that he's ever played since being in the NHL with the Rangers. So that's obviously been really nice to see. So that takes away the need at least a little bit, the fact that Lafreniere has done well over there. But as far as the Mika and Kreider line, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, it's been a revolving door this season on that line. You had Kakko there, you had Wheeler there. You had Brodzinski there, back to Wheeler, and now Kakko was back out there with them today. Will Cooley, even the game before, before Kakko got back, he got a game with them. So I would think maybe, a top-end right winger, if they can afford such a player and keep themselves underneath the salary cap, that's definitely an option. But I think the thing that might be an even bigger option, or a bigger need, rather, is center, because Philip Hedl, it's so hard to know. I mean, he's had the concussions, and he's been out for so long. We don't know when he's going to come back, if he's going to come back, what's going to happen there. And right now, you still have a good 1-2 punch with Mika and Trocheck. But man, if anything happens to one of those two, now you've got like Bonino or like Goodrow or like Johnny Brodzinski centering a top 6 line. And that's not going to be an ideal situation. Nothing against those guys, but you want, a center with more offense. So looking at it that way, I just get the feeling that, they might make a run at a center. And it doesn't have to be a superstar player. Really, anybody that can give any kind of offense might help a little bit, center the third line. 2 names that I toss out not too long ago were Adam Henrique and then also Sean Monahan. I think they both make some sense. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit later on future episodes of Locked On Rangers. But yeah, I mean, I think for sure center or right wing, those seem to be the 2 biggest areas of need.
All right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find the podcast wherever you're watching this episode or listening to this episode, whatever it might be. We're on YouTube. We're on every audio streaming platform that you can think of. And as for me, you can find me on social media, on Twitter, or X, I guess it is now, at JChik17. And then you've also got the show's handle at LO_NY_Rangers. And yeah, definitely give us a follow and say hi. And it's always good to talk to some hockey fans and just talk Ranger hockey.
All right, John, thanks so much.
You got it, Gil. Thanks for having me.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You could find bets in their new Explore tab, or you can head over to the Parlay Hub to make a parlay. That's the best place to find the most popular parlays, and there's a whole lot more. And look, you've got a lot more. You have pro and college basketball. Of course, you've got hockey. Check out the odds for your favorite team on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.